This episode is brought to you by Power Metal Resources, a London-listed exploration company focused on resource, prospect generation and value crystallization across a range of resources and countries. To learn more, visit www.powermetalresources.com. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich, and this is the Market Bull Podcast. As this podcast grows, every subscriber helps. From those of you who watch this on YouTube or to those that listen on Spotify and Apple, every follower helps. If you do this one favor and hit follow on whatever platform you find us on, I promise I will continue to look and find fascinating people across the world and bring their perspectives to you. Thank you and enjoy this episode. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me today on the show is Sydel Sierra, the co-founder of Digital Wealth Group, which is an education platform in the cryptocurrency world. And it goes without saying that since we last spoke early December, Bitcoin and the greater crypto scene has gone astronomical. And some of what we talked about has probably come to a bit of fruition about the bull market run. But welcome back to the show, Sydel.
Cool. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me back on. And it's certainly been an incredible few months in the crypto market, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, just saying, I mean, toot your own horn about the AFR reaching out to have a discussion with you about the crypto world and you landing on the front page. So hopefully a few listeners might have got that, or if not, they can look at the article that was written. But since we last spoke, I mean, there's been a fair bit of activity in the crypto scene. We'll talk about the Bitcoin ETF launching and how that's had really a massive impact on its price now being at all-time highs in AUD dollars and US, at least since we're recording. Can we talk a little bit about what's really been unfolding since December when we last spoke?
Oh, God, it's like, where do we begin? But the main narrative, I know, the main narrative has been around the institutions moving in. So all through 2023, they were obviously putting in their applications to have their own Bitcoin spot ETF product available to retail. And then that all came to fruition on the 11th of January. All 11 were approved, and then that sort of created a bit of a market rally, followed by a bit of a pullback. But we've seen some really astronomical growth in the market since January.
Yeah, it's been nuts. I mean, can we delve a little bit more about? I mean, people probably thought that Bitcoin was going to get a bit of a boosting from these ETFs, but I mean, with a lot of discussion about the halving on the horizon, which we'll go about, and more so, Bitcoin nowhere near the all-time high. I mean, did anyone really have an idea that this was potentially going to happen? And I mean, the volumes that these ETFs are buying, these companies that are buying, I mean, how do you paint the picture of how much activity is really unfolding?
Well, I guess one of the things is to consider to look at the ETF market in itself. And ETFs, if we look at ETF history, if we look at ETF history, if you actually have a look at the 500 ETFs launched in 2023, the total trading volume amongst them was about 0.45 billion. And day one of the Bitcoin ETFs launching, there was 4.66 billion in volume. So you can see that it's made ETF history. I mean, what we did in day one, it was multiple times what 500 non-crypto related ETFs did in an entire year. And that trading volume was expected to sort of slow down, but it hasn't. In fact, it's been multiplying and growing in numbers as well.
Do you see that potentially, talking about the halvening and what that is? I mean, can you talk about if that when that happens, I should say in April, do you have any speculation as to what that might have in turn impacts on the potential price of Bitcoin, but also how the ETFs function?
So the halving event has historically always been a trigger into the next bull market rally. So despite even with the institutional movement, we're still expecting the big rate retail movement to come as well, which hasn't even really begun. In
Mm.
fact, retail is only just starting to click on because based on cyclical history, that's what the halving event tends to do. So in a matter of weeks, we have this halving event happening where the amount of Bitcoin that is coming into circulating supply, like let's just say brand new minted coins available for purchase, It's going from 900 to 450 per day coming into market. So I always liken to gold. What do you think would happen to the price of gold if I said that all of the gold in the world coming into the market would cut in
Mm.
half in April? What do you think would happen? So this tends to the increased scarcity drive demand, and also propels the bull market. So you now have all of this, all of these layers, which we've been saying we're going to have this unprecedented year for crypto because you've got this institutional demand, which has never been there before, that is now added into the market that is already has been naturally growing over the last decade. So you've got this retail market sitting higher than ever. Plus, now the institutional movement, all of it together is sort of it's we call it the volume game now. So we have this sort of extra doorway of capital that can roll into the crypto market, and compounded with the halving event and the retail movement and the bull market basically set to come in over the next few months. So I kind of look at this as like a big squeeze. The crypto market's going through a big squeeze. So exciting.
Yeah, it's quite a way to put it because I can imagine that even in your position, you'd be a fair bit of interest about it, and potentially a lot of people saying, "Oh, I've missed out." Given that not even it would have been 18 months ago, Bitcoin was back down, you know, sort of back towards its sort of normal levels in a way for some people. And it's risen, 200 odd percent or more since then. And now it's, broken out. And a lot of people will be saying, oh, I've missed out on this. There's nothing else that I can do. What do you really say to people that are taking that mindset towards maybe just Bitcoin, but more so the greater crypto scene?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I do really believe that we're still yet to enter into the real bull market of 2024 and 2025. And the movement we've seen so far has really been the institutional push. And that's just going to drive more volume into our already predicted bull market, which is to come around the corner. And I always say to people, to especially new investors entering this market, Bitcoin is the big flag on top of the mountain. Okay, it sort of grabs international attention, it draws in trillions of dollars of capital, hundreds of millions of investors. It's sort of like the big billboard. And so I say that if you're focusing on Bitcoin, you're missing the greater opportunity that is the entire crypto market. Because what happens is when all that money flows into Bitcoin, it's like a rising tide that lifts all boats. And the tide is Bitcoin and it lifts all
Mm.
market. And that capital has an on-flow effect to the broader market. Already seeing that transfer begin to happen into Ethereum. And then once we start to see Ethereum move, we'll then start to see an altcoin market rally, which is every other crypto other than Bitcoin. So we have a long way to go. And investors that sit sort of watching Bitcoin and thinking it's too late will certainly, I believe, potentially miss that opportunity in the altcoin market.
Are there particular parts of the altcoin market that you're sensing might have a potential run on? I mean, the Ethereum ETF is also another discussion. I don't know how long down the path that is, but if you sort of take what's happening with Bitcoin and the ETF and then maybe apply it potentially in the same sort of realm to Ethereum, I mean, when that runs, then, or when it gets approved and runs, then that's another huge influx of demand and institutional investors. But yeah, maybe more on the altcoins first. I mean, have you got particular eyes on a few of them that you think have got the potential that, I don't know, you're just interested in?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I look for growth sectors 'cause there's thousands of cryptos, but we want to sort of break it down into sectors. I like to look at blockchain technology and where the innovation and infrastructure is happening. The AI movement, and it is naturally going to extend into the cryptocurrency market. So all of these sectors. So we look for new blockchain, we look for, say, decentralized finance, cryptocurrencies in those sectors, uh, even layer ones that, like Solana and things like that, that are probably sitting a little bit undervalued right now that have the potential to do a great run up, especially with the recent announcement of Pantera looking to acquire a substantial amount of Solana. And then you have not, I mean, I always believe that meme coins deserves maybe a small percentage in people's portfolios
Mm.
because it is a lottery system. And, you can have some stake in some of the meme coins, definitely some up and coming ones there. And so there's a few different cryptos that you can keep an eye on, but diversification is really key because people think they've got to buy Bitcoin and they just hold Bitcoin and that's it. But I say that in order for you to double your money in Bitcoin, the entire price of Bitcoin has to double, and it takes a lot to move the price of Bitcoin to be double where it
Mm.
is today. So I always say, what if you have an asset, an allocation to Bitcoin, let's say Ethereum, and then diversify into a broader market across DeFi, new blockchain, across AIs, meme coins, and you have a percentage spread across that, and then you are really, in my opinion, for the bull market.
Yeah, the some of the meme coins, I mean, Doge, Pepe, I think they had astronomical runs last week. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. They raced up more percent than many, at least, from my realm, the ASX do in a few days, within a handful of, hours as well, which is just astronomical. And I think that's the attraction within the whole crypto scene, is some of the returns that are made are, well, they're quite healthy and quite nice. But if we look potentially now almost at the naysayer argument, I know there's constant, almost, I guess, discussions between regulatory bodies and people within crypto. So I just want to get your thoughts on what's unfolding potentially in the Australian regulatory scene for crypto. Is there much sort of further acceptance of it, or are they still really trying to, I don't know, put regulatory clamps on it? And then is that also, Australia following suit of what other jurisdictions like the US and like what other countries are doing?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big question. I mean, considering crypto is an international currency, many people tend to think crypto is defined by the jurisdiction that they live in, which is very, very much not the case. It's a little bit like how the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission in the US, believe that they sort of run the crypto world, which,
Mm,
they sort of come out with their news. And yes, it does have a huge effect on the market. But I do, it's only one regulatory body across the world. You go to places like Europe, across Europe and Canada, and you're going to see different infrastructure, different regulatory compliance and things like that coming through for cryptocurrencies. In Australia, one of the biggest concerns for new investors is sort of the clampdowns of banks, with the limits that they're allowing to on ramp into cryptocurrency exchanges. Things like maxing out 10 grand limits into exchanges, stuff like that. So some people are definitely, I know investors are certainly looking for alternatives on how they can on ramp currency. But the ironic thing is that banks are often the biggest adopters of this infrastructure. They're creating stable coins, they're creating
mm,
products and retail services. Uh, you even got to look at the SEC. I mean, the SEC still have an action suit against Coinbase, but Coinbase is the main custodial partner for all of the ETFs. So
mm.
there's hypocrisy through most of this, and if in my personal opinion, I believe it's something that's very much still unfolding, and it's in that if you look at the 5 stages of grief, the acceptance, denial, and all of sorts of things, I believe we move through that with the crypto space in relation to the bigger institutions and regulatory bodies as well. And then
Mm.
there's pushback, then they allow, then they clamp down, and then they accept. And then there's all this sort of gray areas that are still very gray. And, you've got CBDCs, central bank digital
Yep.
currencies, you got this there's so many different things that are sort of trying to edge their way into this crypto sphere whilst adoption is still growing and awareness of this asset class is still growing. So I think whilst they will always try to push back, cryptocurrencies in itself is an international product. International exchanges exist. Off ramping and on ramping exists in any jurisdiction across the world. So, there'll always be options for investors.
And that was really the purest sense of decentralized finance in itself, was being able to alleviate the idea that you're controlled by certain jurisdictions, that it's decentralized, it's not controlled by one area. And yeah, the irony is that the US government has a ridiculous sort of stash of Bitcoin kept away as well. I think they're one of the largest holders of Bitcoin, either from seizing it or potentially investing it. And it's that sort of, well, if they weren't all about it and interested in it, then why would they have it all to begin with? But that's another sort of interesting conundrum that goes on there. When you're talking there about yourself trolling through the list of these altcoins like before, you're talking about some of the technologies and the DeFi. I think for many investors, how do you sort of go through that process? Because, you're talking about technologies. Are you looking at the actual benefits and use cases for some of these currencies? Because I think that's another dilemma that a lot of investors that are approaching this for a new time how do you actually value some of these coins or their potential use cases over others?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. Because if you take the most easy comparison would be to look at meme coin versus something in DeFi. So meme coin, there's really no real utility. It's actually designed to dump on investors' heads, basically. And
Mm,
then you've got DeFi, which, for example, you can take a loan against your cryptocurrencies and never sell your crypto, where you are the lender, the borrower. So you technically are your own bank. So that people can extract value from their crypto where the underlying collateral is your actual cryptocurrency. So that in itself has huge utility. It has value. It contributes to a new legacy system. Whereas a meme coin does not tend to have that value. But I'm not just using meme coins as an example. Many cryptos, what you ask the question, what is utility, or how do I describe
mm,
cryptocurrency? And it actually doesn't make any sense. So oftentimes the cryptos with great utility will survive the test of time. They'll bear fruits for years to come, and they'll survive multiple markets. And that's really, you can always even look at cryptos and how long they've actually been in this space for, how many cycles have they survived the test of time, what's their trajectory, where are they going. But how, like I always say to investors, you can use technology, you can invest in the technology. It's like Apple, you can buy an Apple computer. You don't have to use that computer to invest in Apple companies. It's very much
mm.
how crypto works.
Mm. And in that case, I mean, when we were talking about it in December, talking about the catalyst of when, I guess, the mainstream became accustomed to it, or what would it take for everyday people to suddenly start, actually seeing crypto and the use cases for it more so in the everyday world. And, I've seen some discussions. I believe Telegram is looking to implement I think it's the Tron token. And there's a lot of talk about, some of these big companies starting to implement uses of currencies into their, I guess, functionality and utilities. But in Australia, what do you think is going to be that catalyst that potentially gets a lot of people waking up to the reality that cryptocurrency and crypto is here to stay and is going to have a big sort of impact in, the future of business and investing?
Mhm. So I mean, one of those things could be just what Visa and Mastercard are doing with their crypto-backed services. Typically, in a bull market, we always see innovation just come to the absolute surface. So we'll see a lot more payment providers and more acceptance of cryptocurrencies in general. Obviously, it has become more aware, it has become more established as a legitimate asset class, and all of these are things that will draw natural in attention, especially in Australia, into the crypto market. I think predominantly at the moment, it's still people looking for retirement plans and investment strategies through crypto space. I think the whole long term sort of where you can, go pay for coffee with crypto. I still think we're probably one
Long
cycle
way.
away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially because banks need to, especially with what we've seen come from this cycle with institutions providing retail services. I believe what we're going to see now is a whole plethora of uh, more services for that type of thing coming from corporations, things like that. So
Mm.
now that that's been approved, it sort of set a huge precedent. I think we'll see that continue on. So perhaps the next cycle, we're going to see a lot more of that accessibility to crypto. But for now, I still believe it's a people are looking at more of as an asset class to invest into still.
Okay, okay. And I mean, we've talked about previously and even today about the impending bull run that maybe goes, Bitcoin's at the top of the hill, as you said, but maybe more of the other coins are now coming to the forefront. When it's hard to pinpoint when exactly that happens, but do you see potential, timelines of when this happens? Is it, potentially after the Bitcoin halving that then the acceleration happens, or is it more so when the Ethereum ETF is finalized, which again, that might be a bit more down the track. But do you potentially have an idea as to, is it just this whole year, if you just sort of look away, that you're going to have missed a potential great opportunity?
Yeah, great question, Ben, because many people go, "It's too late. Is it time to get in
Mm,
now?" And of course, no one wants to feel that they're left behind the boat. Is there still a window of opportunity? And in my opinion, absolutely. There's a few things to consider. Firstly, that nothing goes up and up and up forever, so we get
yeah.
pullbacks. And what we're seeing right now is there's some slight top signals in here to indicate we might have some sharp pullbacks, 20, 30%. pullback in Bitcoin, which will also reflect across the broader market. So I look at pullbacks as great things. I call them natural re-entry points into the market. And then we have not only that, but around the end of May, we have the Ethereum ETFs. So we're sort of coming into a whole Ethereum season right now.
Mm.
And I do believe also fundamentally after the halving event, about 3 to 6 months after the halving event, we typically see the whole market actually move into the actual bull market phase. So we're still considered to be in the pre-bull market phase. So there's quite a lot of fundamentals. I believe pretty much we have, up until past the halving event, say 3 to 6 months. So what's that leading us into July, August, September before we really start to move into the full bull market swing. So I would say the time to take action would be now, to be looking at, safe accumulation into the crypto market, averaging in over periods of time to remove the risk of volatility and things like that. Um, and then, because we don't want to be buying at the all-time highs. We don't want to be waiting a year to be entering when everyone's talking about it, because
Mm.
then technically you're locking in losses for years to come. And investors do wait for years for the moments that we are going through right now, which is that pre-bull market phase. And so those last moments to accumulate to enter into this space are sort of happening over the next few months. And then what I say, all bets are off, so to speak. And we want to be riding this bull market and taking profit, not buying in.
And then I guess the million or trillion-dollar question, at least in this realm, is how do people start? Because I know that a lot of the mainstream, at least ASX and US trading platforms now have the ability to buy certain finite cryptos that are available, and there's definitely been a push because they see value from their end to be able to make money on ins and out purchases. But how can people potentially go about starting to build up their own crypto wallet and cryptocurrency investment portfolio?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because some people ask me, well, okay, now that the ETFs are out, should I just go buy? Why would I go through a self custody option when I can just go through the ETFs route, through the institution route? And I say,
Mm.
well, do you only want exposure to Bitcoin? And soon, do you only want exposure to Ethereum? And whilst, yes, they are two great cryptocurrencies, they're two largest cryptos, they're the most conservative, so great low risk options to begin dabbling in the crypto market. You are missing out on a huge opportunity that is enormous. As my brother used to say, it's the fire hose to the face of financial opportunity that is
Mm.
not Bitcoin and just Ethereum. Like it really gives you a visual. And I say crypto gives to you what you give to it. So I always say, firstly, is to get registered on an exchange in your local jurisdiction, so that you can actually onboard your capital into the exchange to start acquiring your first cryptocurrencies. So your Ethereums, your Bitcoin, whatever they may be in the according to your shopping list. Some cryptos you may need to go into what we call DeFi exchanges. So currently you'd use CeFi exchanges. So you might need to go into a little bit of a further step and acquire more speculative cryptos across the centralized finance market. And then you want to store them on a hardware wallet, not on the exchange. So on
Mm.
a hardware wallet that you control, you have the private keys, and from there, then you can start to do other things with your portfolio, like you can earn high interest and things like that from some of the cryptos that you're earning, counteracting inflation. I sort of say, look for cryptos for a way to earn 10% on your money, and then you're at least keeping up with the inflation,
Mm.
in
Yeah, very
Australia.
true.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So there are many ways, but the first thing you want to do is have a way to on ramp money into the crypto market if you're looking to invest. Sometimes that can take 5 days just for that process alone. You will need to KYC, know your customer, send passport and driver's licenses. So, and then you will need to acquire your fundamentals, or what I call just a foundational portfolio, and then you want to start to acquire more speculative cryptos. But I do suggest to dollar cost average, which is just incremental investments at set times apart, so that you can build a portfolio, but you're not sort of deploying all your capital now. Then in a week's time, the market's pulled back 30%, and then you now have to wait to get that 30% back before you're in profit
Mm.
again. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if we go back now, potentially, Digital Wealth Group, I mean, you would have started because you had such an interest in potentially an opportunity, and especially in the education side of it. speaking today, you can see that you've got a treasure trove of knowledge within this realm. It's your niche, and you've done incredibly well out of it. And I can imagine at the moment you're only getting potentially more and more inquiries about all these different ranges of education and learning. So, I mean, what can you offer people if they are looking for more information on how to potentially, dollar cost average into crypto, and how to start, and how to look at opportunities? I mean, what can you offer people with your services?
Yeah. So obviously it's a big step sometimes taking from going from never investing, potentially never investing in some people's lives, to then going into the crypto market. So for those individuals that perhaps would like some hand holding, they would like a one-on-one coach, someone to privately walk them through the setup process, discuss their risk tolerance, their investment capital, and then to get them into a portfolio where you're spread across growth sectors. You know when to sell, you know the right times to invest into. That's something that we do offer. So that's a one-on-one private service. You also have great masterclasses and great community that you're part of, crypto investors that have been in this space for years and years. So we have a community of thousands and thousands of investors worldwide. We've been helping people since 2017, so almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years in May, a long time, and so we've had a lot of students come into our pathway and helped a lot of people enter this space safely and get ready for the bull market.
Yeah, I remember watching part of your discussion. You had a 2-hour recorded webinar last year, and I know that's still up there. And you record and promote content quite regularly. And I know that when you do enter in a bull market, suddenly the interest in the education, it becomes the forefront and what everyone wants to do, because, well, yeah, it's been tough going in a lot of equity markets over the last couple of years, and this has got potential to really help a lot of people if they can figure it out. And first step is learning. So, I mean, if there's some key things from the discussion today, like 3 key things that investors and listeners should think about going forward from the whole broad market perspective, but also, even approaching investing in crypto, I mean, what would those 3 key points be?
Yeah, most definitely. So I would say, obviously timing is everything, and it's more important than the cryptos that you hold. So people that think that to wait for the market to go up a little bit more to give them confidence to enter in is actually reverse thinking. We want to be a contrarian, um, you know, opposite to group think. So the best time to
Mm.
get in is always the opposite time, and then also to have some exposure. So whilst there are naysayers out there, there are people that will always give you reasons why something. Why wouldn't we want to have some exposure just highest performing asset class in human history?
Mm.
It's the fastest appreciating asset. It's outperforming at most traditional markets. I mean, if you even just since the ETFs, it's gone, Bitcoin and Ethereum have gone up between 40 and 55%. Just that alone. We even have a portfolio that has doing about 250% since just in the last couple of months. And that's just looking at us by investing in altcoins. It's a little
Mm.
portfolio. So having exposure is better than none. We don't want to be regret because we listen to naysayers. There's obviously something there. There are millions of investors into the space making great money. Why don't we have exposure? And the third thing, which is I teach all our new students, is overwhelm is the opportunity. And if you feel overwhelmed entering this space, just telling yourself this is an opportunity, because people begin and they this whole web of information, but it isn't as hard as you think. And a step by step process you can do to enter safely while minimizing risk. So overwhelm is the opportunity is not to be feared, and simply take one step at a time. And it's I think we've got an amazing 18-month market ahead of us, and those who take action are going to really reap the benefit, in my opinion.
Mm, yeah, I think that's a very good way of summarizing. Overwhelming equals the opportunity, because for myself personally, and probably for a lot of people, it does seem like there is a lot of considerations, and you sort of throw your hands up and go, "Oh, it's too hard." But if you've got the opportunity, it sounds a lot more enticing than saying it's overwhelming. So I appreciate that. It's a well phrased way of putting it. But yeah, thank you so much, Sydel, for speaking on the show today. For those that are been infatuated with this, and I'm sure I'm going to get you back on as we loom into the halvening and then also the Ethereum ETF. I mean, where can they go to stay in contact with you and follow what you're doing within this sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So there'll be links provided with this podcast, and also you can go to digitalwealthgroup.com.au and subscribe. We'll also include the link to our 90-minute free training, which includes all of the latest information, everything we've spoken about here today, but in more detail with lots of charts, because everyone knows that I love my charts. So lots of charts, lots of fundamentals to look at. And then, of course, at the end of that 90-minute training, if you are wanting to go ahead and have some one-on-one support and help, you can find out all about our products and services at the end of that. So those interested.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll be putting that all in the links and in the show notes as well. So, thank you so much. Since we spoke, it's been an insane period of time for crypto. And yeah, as you've talked about then and talked about today, it's only really just beginning as it ventures into this bull market. And yeah, well, this is the Market Bull podcast. So you're sort of speaking to the choir here. But yeah, thank you so much, Sydel, for taking the time to speak with me on the show today.
Cool. Thank you, Ben. And thanks all the listeners here today.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow the Market Bull on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.